Welcome to the world of science fiction stories, and don't forget to like, share and subscribe my channel. Enjoy the listening. The cry that brought the might of Earth's military. Captain Vex Terran leaned back in his command chair, stretching his forearms with a theatrical yawn as he gazed at the small blue-green planet on the view screen. The reconnaissance vessel Silent Observer had been monitoring this backwater world for nearly 3 standard cycles, and quite frankly, he was bored out of his cranial ridges. Another day watching the hairless apes stumble around their pathetic little mud ball, he muttered, tapping his clawed fingers against the armrest. Commander Nyera, any updates worth my precious attention? Commander Nyera Zev, his second-in-command and the only crew member who tolerated his sarcastic outbursts, barely looked up from her data terminal. Nothing that would interest someone of your refined tastes, Captain, she replied, her voice dripping with matching sarcasm. Just more of the same, territorial disputes, resource consumption, and primitive attempts at space exploration. Hey, they call those tin can spacecraft. Vex snorted, pointing to a satellite passing below. My first hatchling made better toys from food scraps. The bridge crew exchanged knowing glances but maintained their professional composure. Captain Terran's dismissive attitude toward lesser species was legendary throughout the Galaxian scout fleet, but nobody could deny his effectiveness as a reconnaissance officer. His reports were always thorough, if somewhat colored by his unique perspective. Pull up the military assessment again, Vex commanded, slurping noisily from a nutrient pouch. I need a good laugh before my hibernation cycle. The holographic display flickered to life, showing Earth's various military installations, weapon systems, and defense capabilities. Vex scrolled through the data with casual disinterest, occasionally snickering at what he considered primitive technology. Look at this, combustion-based propulsion, physical projectile weapons. These humans are practically still banging rocks together. He threw his head back and cackled, spilling some of his purple nutrient fluid down his uniform. And the Empire considers them a potential threat? What a waste of our valuable resources. Commander Nyera approached, her expression more serious. With respect, Captain, their rate of technological advancement is concerning. Data shows their military capabilities have quadrupled in just the last century of their time. FFFFT, Vex waved dismissively with his lower left arm. By the time they develop anything remotely threatening, my great-grand spawn will be commanding this vessel. The High Command is just being paranoid as usual. He stood up, all 7 feet of his scaled body stretching to its full height, and stalked to the observation dome. Earth rotated slowly beneath them, their cloaking technology ensuring no primitive human detection systems could spot them from this distance. The cities looked like tiny glittering dots against the continents. You know what the problem is with High Command? Vex asked, not really expecting an answer. They've never actually seen these species up close. They just read reports and get nervous. But I've studied these humans for 3 cycles now. They're divided, territorial, aggressive toward their own kind. They can barely cooperate enough to function as a planetary society, let alone pose any threat to the Galaxian Empire. He pressed a clawed finger against the transparent dome, tracing the outline of a continent. Besides, they're so fragile. 2 arms, 2 legs, no protective scales, no secondary heart, no backup nervous system. One little puncture and they leak their red fluids everywhere until they cease functioning. Pathetic. Commander Nyera joined him at the dome, her expression thoughtful. The assessment team arrives tomorrow. What will you tell them? Vex's mouth curved into what passed for a smile in his species, a predatory display of pointed teeth that would have terrified any human who saw it. I'll tell them exactly what I've observed, a primitive species not worth the fuel it would take to conquer them. If the Empire wants to add this planet to our collection, we could do it with a single battle group. He chuckled, turning away from Earth with dismissive finality. But really, why bother? There's nothing here worth having. Little did Captain Vex Terran know just how catastrophically wrong his assessment would prove to be. Captain, we have a situation. Lieutenant K burst onto the bridge, his secondary breathing gills flaring with agitation. Vex Terran barely glanced up from his entertainment tablet. Unless the humans have suddenly developed faster-than-light travel, I don't care. It's the assessment team, sir. They've gone planet-side. That got his attention. Vex's cranial ridge flared in alarm as he leapt to his feet. What? Without authorization? Without proper containment protocols? Are they completely brain-dead? The view screen switched to a real-time feed from somewhere in what humans called Montana, a sparsely populated area with minimal surveillance infrastructure. 3 Galaxian scout officers in stealth suits were approaching a small dwelling nestled among tall vegetation. Patch me through to their commander now. Vex roared, his scales darkening with rage. Commander Nyera worked frantically at her console. They're blocking communications, sir. Standard assessment team protocol once they've committed to specimen collection. Specimen collection? Oh no, 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 no. Vex slammed all 4 fists onto his command console. Our command was explicit, we are here to observe, not interact. But it was too late. On the screen, the assessment team had already entered the dwelling. Sounds of confusion, a human female scream, and then, worst of all, the high-pitched wail of a human offspring. They're taking a child, Vex's voice dropped to a horrified whisper. Of all the stupid, reckless. The feed showed the team rushing back to their small shuttle craft, a squirming bundle secured in a containment field. The human child, a small female with bright red head fur, couldn't have been more than 6 Earth years old. Her face was contorted in terror, tears streaming down her cheeks as she screamed for her mother. That's when they all heard it, a sound that made every Galaxian on the bridge freeze in primitive, instinctual fear. The child was wearing a small device on her wrist, a device that was now emitting a piercing signal. What is that? Vex demanded, his voice tight. Lieutenant K's voice trembled as he answered. It appears to be some sort of distress beacon, sir. Commander Nyera's fingers flew across her console. It's broadcasting on multiple frequencies, military and civilian. The signal, it's everywhere, and it contains the child's identity, location coordinates, and... She paused, her yellow eyes widening. Biometric data indicating distress and fear. The assessment team's shuttle had already docked with their larger vessel, which was now breaking orbit, heading for the rendezvous point. Track them, Vex ordered, his voice deadly calm. And begin continuous monitoring of all Earth communications channels. I want to know exactly how the humans respond to this. On the screen, the child's mother stood in front of her home, screaming her daughter's name into the night sky. Lucy. Lucy. But Lucy was already halfway to the upper atmosphere, her wrist beacon continuing its relentless broadcast across every communication network on planet Earth. Vex collapsed back into his command chair. Those idiots have no idea what they've just done. Captain, you need to see this. Commander Nyera's voice was uncharacteristically subdued. Vex dragged himself out of his agitated pacing. 6 hours had passed since the child abduction, and he'd been drafting increasingly apocalyptic reports to send to high command about the assessment team's reckless actions. What now? He snapped. The main view screen split into multiple feeds, each showing different locations around Earth. What Vex saw made his primary heart skip a beat. That's not possible, he whispered. Every major military installation on the planet had erupted into frenzied activity. Naval vessels were leaving ports at emergency speeds. Aircraft were launching in massive numbers. Ground vehicles were deploying from bases worldwide. Space launch facilities were preparing rockets at unprecedented speed. Are they mobilizing their entire global military over one offspring? Vex couldn't believe what he was seeing. Lieutenant K, monitoring Earth communications, turned from his station. Sir, they're calling it Protocol Amber. It appears to be a pre-existing emergency response specifically designed for child abductions. But the scale. Nyera added, unable to hide the concern in her voice. They've never activated it globally before. The coordination is unexpected. Nations that our intelligence indicated were hostile to each other are sharing military resources and intelligence. The view screen showed American and Russian generals in the same command center, Chinese and Indian naval vessels forming joint search patterns, European and Middle Eastern air forces establishing coordinated patrol zones. Their communication channels are flooded with the child's information, Lieutenant K continued. They're calling her, Little Red. Every human with any kind of receiving device now knows her name, her face, and that something took her from her home. Another officer called out, "Sir, their orbital assets are being repositioned. Surveillance satellites, space telescopes, everything they have is being directed to search for anomalies." Vex slumped into his command chair, watching in disbelief as the species he dismissed as disorganized and primitive demonstrated a level of global cooperation that would have impressed even the High Council of the Galaxian Empire. "They've suspended all commercial air traffic worldwide," Nyera reported, her voice hollow with shock. "Their entire planet is now operating under unified military control. We've never observed anything like this in any species we've studied." On one screen, a human female in a military uniform stood behind a podium, her face set in grim determination as she addressed her planet, "To whoever has taken one of our children, you have made the gravest mistake of your existence. There is nowhere in this universe you can hide. We are coming for our daughter, and we will not stop until she is home." The communications officer's voice cracked as he translated the next transmission. "They're telling their population that first contact with an alien species has occurred and that the aliens have stolen a child. Sir, the humans are now operating under the assumption that they are at war." Vex stared at the screens showing the unprecedented mobilization of Earth's military might, all for a single human offspring. "What have we done?" he whispered. "With all due respect, Grand Admiral, you're not seeing what I'm seeing." Vex practically shouted at the holographic projection of his superior. Grand Admiral Zrel Kar, resplendent in his ceremonial battle armor, looked down his elongated snout at Vex with thinly veiled contempt. The four other members of the Imperial Strategic Command floated as smaller holograms around him, their expressions ranging from boredom to amusement. "Captain Terran," the Grand Admiral's voice rumbled with authority. "Your hysteria over a primitive species tantrum is noted but unnecessary. These humans have no spacefaring military capability. Their reaction, while admittedly interesting from an anthropological perspective, poses zero threat to our assessment team or the Empire." Vex ran his claws over his head ridges in frustration. "You don't understand. They've united their entire planet's military forces in 6 hours. Species that were ready to annihilate each other yesterday are now coordinating global search patterns. This level of cooperation is unprecedented." Strategic Commander Pelks, notorious for her hardline views on lesser species, let out a trilling laugh. "How charming. The primitive maternal instinct at a societal scale. Perhaps we should collect more of their young for study." "No!" Vex shouted, then immediately regretted his outburst. "I mean, with respect, Commander, that would be most unwise." Grand Admiral Carr leaned forward, his holographic form growing larger. "Captain Terran, perhaps you've spent too much time observing these creatures. You seem to have developed an emotional attachment to them." "I have developed an appropriate concern for the Empire's interests," Vex replied stiffly. "What exactly are the High Command's plans for Earth? I believe I have a right to know given my position." The 5 superior officers exchanged glances before Admiral Carr sighed. "Very well. Earth has been designated for Phase 1 colonization within the next 10 cycles. Their mineral resources and biological diversity make it a desirable acquisition. The assessment team's mission was simply to confirm your reports about their military capabilities, or lack thereof." "And now?" Vex asked. Now they'll bring their specimen back for study, and we proceed as planned. This global tantrum will be noted in the final assessment but changes nothing. The Grand Admiral's mouth stretched into a cruel smile. After all, what exactly do you think these humans can do about it? As the holographic conference ended, Vex turned back to his view screen, watching Earth's military forces swarming like angry insects across their planet. I think we're about to find out, he murmured. Multiple objects approaching the assessment vessel at high velocity. Lieutenant K shouted, his normally blue scales paling to a sickly gray. Vex rushed to the tactical display. Impossible. How did they? The child's beacon, Commander Nyera interrupted. They've been triangulating its position for the past 12 hours. And Captain, these aren't their primitive rockets. The tactical display showed 20 sleek objects moving at speeds that shouldn't have been possible with Earth's known technology. They had emerged from a hidden facility deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, a facility that hadn't appeared in any of their reconnaissance data. Magnify, Vex ordered, his voice tight. The screen showed angular black craft with no visible propulsion system, no exhaust, no heat signature, nothing that explained how they were moving so fast or operating beyond Earth's atmosphere. Those aren't in our intelligence reports, Vex whispered. How long have they had these? The communications officer interrupted, Sir, encrypted transmission from the assessment vessel. They're under attack. Under attack? The view screen shifted to show the assessment team's ship, a mid-sized research vessel with minimal defensive capabilities. The human craft had surrounded it in a perfect tactical formation, one that Vex recognized from the Galaxian Fleet Academy's advanced strategy manuals. They're using a Zorian encirclement pattern, Nyera gasped. That's a formation our analysts developed. Before anyone could process this shocking revelation, the human vessels opened fire, not with primitive missiles or projectiles, but with precision energy weapons that cut through the assessment vessel's shields like they weren't even there. How? How? Vex roared, watching as the supposedly superior Galaxian technology failed against weapons that shouldn't exist on such a young world. Sir, the humans are broadcasting on all frequencies, Lieutenant K reported. They're demanding the return of the child. On the screen, the assessment vessel attempted evasive maneuvers, but the human craft anticipated every move, maintaining their deadly formation with uncanny precision. These pilots, Nyera whispered. They're flying with a level of coordination that suggests neural linking, or they're just that good, Vex finished grimly. The communications officer suddenly straightened. Captain, the assessment vessel they're surrendering. Sure enough, the Galaxian research ship had powered down its engines and weapons systems, the universal signal of surrender throughout the known galaxy. The humans are boarding them, Nyera reported, unable to keep the awe from her voice. They've bypassed the airlock security protocols in seconds. How did they even know our technology? Vex watched in stunned silence as black-suited human figures swarmed through the assessment vessel with military precision. Their movements were coordinated, efficient, and terrifyingly familiar. They fight like us, he finally said. Not like primitives discovering space travel, but like warriors who have been doing this for centuries. On the screen, a human soldier in distinctive armor emerged from the vessel, cradling the small red-haired child protectively against their chest. The other human craft immediately moved to form a defensive escort formation. Mission accomplished, the lieutenant translated from the human transmission. Little Red secured. Returning to Earth. Bring our girl home, Vex collapsed into his command chair, staring at the tactical display where the human vessels were already breaking formation to return to their hidden base. We've made a terrible mistake. The Imperial warship Inevitable Conquest emerged from hyperspace with a thunderous displacement of energy that momentarily outshone Earth's sun. Grand Admiral Carr stood on its bridge, his earlier dismissive attitude entirely gone as he glared at the holographic display of the small blue planet. Show me again, he commanded, his voice deadly quiet. Vex nodded to Commander Nyera, who replayed the battle footage. The Grand Admiral and his staff watched in silence as the human vessels executed their flawless attack, disabled a superior Galaxian ship, and retrieved their abducted offspring, all with technology that should have been centuries beyond their development timeline. Explain this, Carr demanded, all four of his eyes fixed on Vex. I cannot, Admiral, Vex admitted. My reconnaissance data showed nothing about these capabilities. They have obviously been concealing their true technological level. Strategic Commander Pelks, no longer laughing, stepped forward. The assessment team survivors report that the humans knew our airlock systems, our shield frequencies, even our communication protocols. Almost as if they've encountered our kind before, Carr finished, his scales darkening with anger. Or someone has been sharing Imperial technology with them. The Strategic Command fell silent, the implications hanging heavy in the air. This betrayal from within was almost unthinkable, yet the evidence suggested it. There's more, Vex said reluctantly. After rescuing the child, they broadcast this message on all frequencies, using our own encryption algorithms. He played the transmission. A stern-faced human in a military uniform spoke directly to the camera. To the species who attempted to abduct one of our children, this was your only warning. We have returned your survey team, minus those who directly participated in the kidnapping. They are being held for crimes against humanity. Any further incursion into Earth space will be considered an act of war. We are aware of your empire and its intentions. We choose to remain peaceful, but make no mistake, we stand ready. Admiral Carr's expression was unreadable as the message ended. How many vessels do they have like the ones we saw? Unknown, Vex replied. The facility they launched from was shielded from our sensors. There could be dozens or thousands. For the first time in his long military career, Grand Admiral Zrel Carr looked uncertain. We need more information before the High Council can decide how to proceed. The colonization plan is temporarily suspended. Vex fought to hide his relief as Carr turned to his strategic staff. Humanity is no longer classified as a pre-space civilization, the Admiral declared. As of this moment, they are designated a potential Level 3 threat to Imperial security. Vex couldn't tear his eyes away from the view screen as he watched the humans prepare their rescue operation. After detecting the assessment vessel's location, Earth had transformed into a hive of coordinated military activity unlike anything Galaxian intelligence had ever documented. They've established a unified command structure in under 24 hours, Commander Nyera reported, her voice betraying her professional admiration. Look at this communication network they've created. The tactical display showed a web of encrypted transmissions connecting military installations across the globe. Nations that had been bitter enemies for centuries were now sharing intelligence, resources, and personnel without hesitation. Patch into their command center, Vex ordered. I want to hear how they're coordinating this. The main view screen switched to a massive underground facility that Galaxian intelligence had somehow missed entirely. Hundreds of humans from different countries and military branches worked in perfect harmony, their focus absolute. At the center stood a diverse group of officers surrounding a holographic projection of the assessment vessel's location in orbit. We have one shot at this, a human female with silver rank insignia addressed the group. The Black Horizon Squadron is our best option for high-orbit intercept. General Mackenzie, a male with distinctive facial hair responded.